Joyce Edwards' multi-sport background coming out of high school will make for a smooth transition once she joins South Carolina's women's basketball program.
You are Locked On Gamecocks, your daily podcast on the South Carolina Gamecocks, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, Gamecock Nation, and welcome back to the Locked On Gamecocks podcast. I'm Andrew Lyon, the host of this podcast, and also the lead publisher for Gamecock Digest over on Fan Nation. Thank y'all so much for making the Locked On Gamecocks podcast your first listen or watch for your team here today. We are free and available both on YouTube and wherever you get your audio podcasts daily. Today's episode is brought to you by Monopoly Go. Game off. We gotta talk more about Monopoly Go. This fast-paced game lets you team up with friends for tournaments to unlock awesome prizes, like unique stickers for trading, cool playing pieces, and hilarious emojis for taunting your friends. So download Monopoly Go, now free on Google Play or the App Store. Game on. We got plenty we're going to dive into on this Monday edition of the Locked On Gamecocks podcast. We're going to talk about the most recent transfer portal addition that Lamont Paris and the men's basketball program has brought in and why he is going to be a good fit for Lamont Paris's vision. We're also going to talk about Shane Beamer, the football program, landing a commit from the 2026 class this past weekend. But before we dive into all of that, I want to talk a little bit about Joyce Edwards, and more specifically, the athletic background that she is going to be bringing with her to South Carolina. Now, Joyce Edwards, she is currently in the midst of her final soccer season with Camden High School. I believe that at this point they've advanced to the lower state championship round after she had a 3-goal performance just a couple of days ago. And it kind of got me thinking. Joyce Edwards plays 3 sports, or has played 3 sports for Camden High School throughout her time there. She obviously has played basketball, she's also played soccer, and she's also played volleyball. And it made me realize that when Joyce Edwards gets to campus, when she officially joins the team and starts going through workouts and starts going through practice with them, her multi-sport background is going to make life easier for all of the coaches on the staff. And the reason why that's going to be the case is because she's already going to be there from an athleticism standpoint. Does that mean that she will have hit her ceiling athletically by the time she gets to Columbia? No, not necessarily. But when you think about it, basketball, soccer, and volleyball, there are certain skills, athletic traits that translate between multiple sports, and also some unique ones, particularly on the volleyball side. So when you look at basketball and soccer, you need to have good conditioning. You need to have good footwork. You've got to have ball skills. You've got to have hand-eye coordination. You've also got to have spatial awareness. Literally all of those skills translate from basketball over to soccer and vice versa. And then when you throw in her experience with volleyball, you've got to have lateral quickness. You need to have some lower body explosiveness. And you've also got to have a great sense of timing. And you can probably apply the timing aspect also to basketball and soccer. And probably some other things that I have not even mentioned up to this point. So where I'm going with all of that is this. Joyce Edwards has had to develop these same athletic skills or the same motor skills over a prolonged period of time in a variety of different settings over the past few years at Camden High School. Now, she's getting ready to go to South Carolina. And obviously, unless there is some change of plans, she's going to be playing just basketball for the Gamecocks. And by the time she joins the program, she gets involved in their off-season strength and conditioning program. She also starts to get involved in some practices where they'll actually be running some plays. The only thing, and I mean really the only thing, that the staff is going to have to worry about is getting her up to speed on how they like to run things on the offensive and defensive end, and also certain situations within the game. That is it. Obviously, that's still going to be a lot in and of itself. That's not to say that Joyce Edwards is going to play perfect basketball when she goes through her freshman campaign here at South Carolina. But you're not going to have to worry about her athletically. Already have seen examples of that at Camden and obviously some all-star games as well. She's already got ball skills to match with her face-up game. She's got the athletic traits. Joyce Edwards is going to have a lesser learning curve because she's there athletically. You know that she is going to be a student of the game based on what she does in the classroom. All you got to worry about is the schematic side. That is it. So, when you think about it like that, Joyce Edwards is going to have a chance to make a tremendous impact on this team in year one. Now, obviously, there will be probably a limit on what she'll be able to do, strictly because of, again, one, she will still be a freshman. She's still going to have probably her freshman moments, but also considering the fact that this is a very deep team still. Yes, they don't have Camila Cardoso anymore, but they literally return everybody else on this roster. You've got an Ashlyn Watkins, you've got a Chloe Kitts, you've got a Sanaya Fakin coming back, you've got a Del Tack getting healthier now, and she is going to be available this next season. So you've already got a lot of people there at those front court positions. Also a Sakima Walker, assuming that she returns for another season. But this staff has got to feel pretty good about the fact that from an athleticism standpoint, they're probably not going to have to worry about her conditioning. They're probably not going to have to worry about explosiveness. They're not going to have to worry about any of that. So, because of that, Joyce Edwards is going to make a bigger impact at a quicker rate than most freshmen in her position. Mainly, obviously, because of the God-given ability that she has been handed down, but also because of the fact that she played multiple sports in high school. A lot of studies out there say that athletes that play multiple sports typically develop a lot faster, and they're a lot more efficient in terms of their overall body movement, especially if they reach a higher level like the collegiate level or the professional level. We'll probably see that play out again here with Joyce Edwards this coming basketball season. Now, Shane Beamer and South Carolina's football program, they've got plenty of reason to be excited on their end as well, as they also landed a prospect this past weekend who possesses a very high ceiling when it comes to the athletic traits that he possesses. We'll talk about that prospect in just a few moments right here on Locked On Gamecocks. Today's show is brought to you by LinkedIn Jobs. When you're hiring for your small business, you want to find quality professionals that are right for the role. And that's why you have to check out LinkedIn Jobs, because LinkedIn Jobs has the tools to help find the right professionals for your team faster and for free. LinkedIn isn't just a job board. LinkedIn helps you hire professionals that you can't find anywhere else, even those who aren't actively searching for a new job but might be open to the perfect role. In a given month, over 70% of LinkedIn users don't visit other leading job sites. So in essence, if you're not looking on LinkedIn, you're looking in the wrong place. On LinkedIn, 86% of small businesses get a qualified candidate within 24 hours. Hire professionals like a professional on LinkedIn. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/lockedoncollege. That's linkedin.com/lockedoncollege to post your job for free today. Terms and conditions do apply. Welcome back to this Monday edition of the Locked On Gamecocks podcast, where we cover your South Carolina Gamecocks every single day. And as always, a big thank you to each and every one of you everydayers who make the Locked On Gamecocks podcast your first listen, wherever you get your audio podcast daily, or your first watch on YouTube. Shane Beamer and the South Carolina Gamecocks landed offensive lineman Anthony Baxter out of South Point High School in Rock Hill, South Carolina this past Saturday. Now, the intriguing part about this commitment, well, I'll say a couple things. One, Baxter coming from South Point High School, obviously that is a long-time established pipeline for South Carolina's football program. They have landed several recent program greats there. Obviously, you think about Jadeveon Clowney, you think about Stephon Gilmore, Devontae Holloman, and you can probably throw out a couple of other names as well. That's not to say Anthony Baxter is going to be on the same level of those guys, but I do think that he possesses some intriguing potential here. We got to remember the fact that Baxter is a 2026 prospect, which means as of this current moment, he is a sophomore in high school, in essence, a rising junior in football terms. But athletically speaking, Baxter, I think that there's something to work with here if you're South Carolina. He moves really well running horizontally on a pull block or a trap block for his size and position. He's already listed like 6'3", 330 some odd pounds. Big boy for a sophomore, but he does not move like he is that big, which is quite scary for opposing defenders that take him on the football field. And there's a couple other things that impress me about Baxter's film when you watch it from this past season. He always is running downhill. Even if the play has gotten ahead of them, if the running backs say 30, 40 yards downfield, you're likely going to see Anthony Baxter running not too far behind his running back, thinking that there could be a chance where maybe he could make one last play, one last key block to help his team get as great of an output as humanely possible on that given play. You love to see that kind of effort out of a kid that is a sophomore, out of somebody that is an offensive lineman, a big one at that. He also is pretty good about running his feet whenever he is engaged with a defender. Sometimes he can be a little bit better, but more often than not, he does a great job of understanding that running his feet is going to be key in order to win his one-on-one matchup. He also has a very powerful open-handed blow that he delivers with his hands, very explosive upper body that he pairs up well with his overall speed. So, athletically speaking, there's a lot of traits to like here with Anthony Baxter. I would also say that he's already probably a pretty solid run blocker because a lot of the highlights that I did watch were run blocking highlights. So a couple things I'll be looking forward to seeing from Anthony Baxter over the next couple years are as follows. One, how does he carry that same mentality now that he's committed to a D1 football program, much less South Carolina in the SEC? I don't say that because I got any concerns about Anthony Baxter, the kid himself. I'm sure Anthony Baxter is a great kid and comes from a good family, but look, sometimes guys, they do really well early on in their high school football careers. They get that big offer, maybe an in-state offer like a South Carolina. They accept the offer, they commit to the program, and then they turn around, they kind of take it easy. They kick their feet up, they don't work quite as hard as they did before they made their commitment, and it basically kind of changes them for the worse. I'm interested to see if Baxter sort of allows even parts of that to seep into his mindset, or if it serves as motivation for him to work even harder than he has up to this point. That's just a general aspect that I'm interested to see moving forward. The other thing I'm interested to see is this. How does Baxter continue to develop as a pass blocker? I saw some pass blocking highlights at the end of his tape that I watched over on huddle.com. And I would say that Baxter, he's got room for improvement as a pass blocker. Again, it's not the athletic traits. He's got the lateral movement ability. I think he's got a really powerful blow that he delivers with his hands. But obviously, that doesn't always matter the most when it comes to pass blocking. I think that hand placement is something he could work on a little bit more. But the thing that I still will encourage Gamecock fans to remember with this kid is he is just a sophomore. He still has 2 whole years of high school football left before he even gets to campus here in Columbia. So assuming that all of this sticks out, that everything remains the same as it is right now, Anthony Baxter, right now he's rated, I believe, somewhere in the 500s nationally for his class. Look, I think that if he just puts his head down and continues to go to work, this is a kid that could be a top 200 level prospect. I think he's got that kind of potential. I think the athleticism, again, stuff that you cannot coach up whatsoever, he's got it. All he's got to do now is become a little bit more well-rounded and work on some of his technique, both in the run game and also in the passing game as well. But needless to say, good pickup for Shane Beamer and the Gamecocks, and I think it's great to see that they are continuing to lock down the state when it comes to the top flight offensive line talent that this state has been pumping out over the last several years. They are continuing that in the 2026 class here by landing Anthony Baxter. But Shane Beamer and the Gamecocks on the football side, they were not the only ones that landed a commitment this past weekend, as Lamont Paris landed his final commitment for this offseason in Norfolk State transfer Jamarii Thomas. So, what are the Gamecocks getting in Thomas, and how could he fit in for Lamont Paris' vision at the point guard spot? We'll talk about all of that in a couple moments right here on Locked On Gamecocks. All right, game off. We got to pause here to talk more about Monopoly Go. I know what you're saying. Flag on the play. You already talked about that. But there's just so much good stuff in this game. In Monopoly Go, you can team up with friends for timed tournaments where you work together to build up each other's boards. The more you win together, the more awesome prizes you unlock. And there's so much to get in Monopoly Go. You can get unique stickers that you can trade with friends to complete albums for big prizes. You can also get cool new playing pieces to travel the boards with, and hilarious emojis for taunting friends when you smash their buildings or heist their vaults. Plus, Monopoly Go feels new and exciting every day with constantly changing tournaments and challenges. A ton include their own unique minigames, like digging for treasure or a robot pachinko machine. And there's always new timed events that help you win big, like massive multipliers for everything you win or rent frenzies. There's always something fun to discover in Monopoly Go. So get off the bench and go download it now free on Google Play or the App Store. Game on. Welcome back to today's edition of the Locked On Gamecocks podcast, where we cover your team every single day in just 30 minutes. All right, let's talk about Jamarii Thomas from Norfolk State, the transfer point guard that Lamont Paris and South Carolina's men's basketball program landed this past weekend. With Thomas now committing and having officially signed the dotted line, the Gamecocks now have no more remaining scholarships, so Thomas is indeed the last player to join the roster, at least in a scholarship format this offseason. The thing about Jamarii Thomas that stands out is that he, for the most part, fits what Lamont Paris is looking for in his point guard. And the thing that I'm sure Lamont Paris loves about Thomas is that he is a rare modern point guard that can not only score the basketball in a variety of ways, but he also cares about defense. A lot of the times now, we see guys that are kind of one or the other. You don't really see a whole lot of elite, really good two-way basketball players anymore, especially kind of at the guard spot. I think that's where it's probably most prominent. You don't see very much in that regard. But Jamarii Thomas, he does not fit the norm. He is the exception. He was named to the MEAC All-Defensive Team for the 2023-24 season, and he averaged 2.1 steals per game. That was good for the 36th best mark in the entire country. Now, here's the other thing I want to talk about. Jamarii Thomas, sure, he might not have the assist numbers that a Talon Cooper had from Minnesota before he came to South Carolina. Thomas averaged, I believe, 3.8 assists per game this past season. And if there is one reason to be a little bit concerned, it is the assist to turnover ratio, which I believe does sit under 2 because he averaged, I want to say, around 2 turnovers per game as Norfolk State's starting point guard this past winter. But here's what I will say. I believe that you don't need to just look at assists in order to determine whether or not a guy is going to be a good point guard for your team as far as seeing the entire floor is concerned. Thomas averaged 16.9 points per game this past season. And I think that that is a good indicator on its own merit to say that Jamarii Thomas is going to see the floor well. And I know it sounds quite generic, me putting it like that, but in all honesty, that's really what Lamont Paris wants out of his point guard. Lamont Paris is not going to ask Jamarii Thomas to score dang near 17 points per game for South Carolina next season. Would he be upset about that? Probably not. But Lamont's not going to ask that out of Thomas. Thomas is going to probably be asked to be a little bit more of a facilitator than he was, say, with Norfolk State. I will say this. The thing that I really like about Thomas, besides the fact that, again, he plays on both ends of the floor and he can score, the thing is, he can take guys off the dribble and he can go to the basket. And as good as Talon Cooper was for this team last year, obviously, the one thing that I think sometimes hurt this offense, even when Talon had the ball in his hands, was the fact that Talon was not necessarily a guy that could take his on-ball defender off the dribble and get past him and go to the basket. Now, he knew how to use his size to advantage. He knew how to not press the gas at a time where it wasn't needed, but Cooper couldn't necessarily create his own opportunities. At least he rarely did, I should say. Jamarii Thomas is going to open things up a little bit more offensively because of his ability to take guys off the dribble. He's got a nice sidestep that he can use to create an open three-point shot for himself. He's also got some on-ball moves that he can use to get into the driving lanes towards the baseline. So Thomas is going to help open things up more offensively because, again, he, I think, sees the floor quite well already for his position, but also he can find different ways to get the ball in people's hands. He can drive into the paint area and just simply dish it off to a Colin Murray Boyles or a Nick Pringle or Jordan Butler or Oku Federico, and they get an easy layup or dunk and a foul. He can drive into the paint, throw it to the opposite corner for a wide open three from a Miles Studi or a Cam Scott or Jacoby Wright. There's going to be several more ways now that South Carolina's going to be able to throw the ball around, send defenses into a scramble drill when they are on offense. Sometimes last year, they lacked that. I don't think that's going to be as much of an issue this next season, mainly because of the fact that Jamarii Thomas is now going to be, again, very likely, I would assume, your starting point guard this next winter. So I think this is a really good pickup from Lamont Paris and this staff. And as I talked about a couple days ago on this show, this roster, I think it is deeper in terms of going position by position. I like the different skill sets. I think they're longer. I think they're more athletic. I think this team's going to be even better potentially defensively than they were last year. And that is a scary thought for opponents because South Carolina last year was already pretty good because they just fundamentally played the right way. But now they've got a little bit more length and athleticism, especially in the front court, to combat those moments where, hey, opposing player gets the best of somebody, they get past them, and now everybody else has got to be on high alert. They're not going to get killed as often when that happens next season because of the additions that they have brought in this offseason. With that being said, that's going to do it for today's edition of the Locked On Gamecocks podcast. I hope that y'all thoroughly enjoyed today's show as always. What are y'all's thoughts on Joyce Edwards' multi-sport background and how that could lessen the learning curve for her once she gets to South Carolina? And what are your thoughts on the football program landing Anthony Baxter out of South Point and Lamont Paris men's basketball program landing Jamarii Thomas out of Norfolk State? Let me know your thoughts down below in the comments section if you watch today's show on YouTube, or you can shoot me a direct message on X at @A_SC if you listen to today's show on an audio podcast app. As always, thank you all so much for tuning in. Have a great rest of your Monday and a fantastic start to your work weeks. And I'll be sure to catch y'all on the next show of the Locked On Gamecocks podcast.